Tonight, we're here at the City Hall for our regular weekly meeting. Please silence all your phones if you haven't, and are we hooked up?
We are. If you're on the phone, could you please mute? Thank you.
Okay. Just please stand for a moment of silence, followed by the pledge of allegiance. Thank you. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Adrian, I assume you knew also that he's late. Okay. Sharon, okay.
I'm going to call the roll, please. Mayor Kathy?
Here.
Councilman Bill McLaughlin?
Here.
Councilman Jerry Wallace? Councilwoman Linda Albert?
Here.
And Councilman Rex Putnam?
Here.
Okay,
Okay. Thank you.
thank you.
Before we start, just one bit of information for, I assume everyone knows that Governor Santos is coming. Thank you. In the 2 o'clock range, and he has approximately 10 people with him. In whatever stage of the meeting we're in, when I get notice, or we get notice that he's arriving, we're gonna sort of, not recess, but give him a chance, and we're gonna ask that, so that we can get at least 10 more in here, that we all like each other and get as close as you can, okay? Can we do that? Or if some of you have to go to the hall, would you please maybe volunteer and you can be able to hear from out there? Is that a better plan? Okay, and we'll know, we'll have a lead on that, yes.
It's my understanding we will recess the meeting, and then we're going on a tour with the governor throughout the city, and then we'll come back and have that round table discussion.
There you go. It's good
So
to have all the
we'll-
information. I
we'll
didn't get
recess
that
that
out front.
meeting.
I didn't know we were going on the tour. So then we will recess, and y'all can stay here.
Okay. Oh, we can walk.
You can go out.
But we'll know
Walk in
more
turn.
when we leave about what maybe what the plan is. But anyway, that's gonna happen when we get the notice. Okay, moving, and as always, also public comment on items that we discuss. We're not gonna quote, have necessarily a public comment, but on any of the items that are brought up, please, join in. You'll be given that opportunity. All right, moving to the agenda. City Administrator, you're up.
So I don't know if Adrian put that in your packet. If you guys remember, the mayor signed a notice to proceed, I think it was on December 17th, to move forward with the new contract for KK Storm. At that time, we did not include waterways in that task order because we didn't have all of our permits in place. We were able to obtain all those permits, so we had the mayor sign a task order to proceed with the waterways, and we just need the council to ratify that back to December 17th, which was the day we actually started that work.
Okay, any questions about the request for ratification of the notice to proceed? Anyone understand what we're doing and what we did do, what we thought we did? Okay. Chair will recognize or entertain a motion to ratify the notice to proceed to KK Storm.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Call the roll, please. Anyone? Excuse me? Okay, call the roll.
Sorry. Mayor Kathy?
Yes.
Bill McLaughlin?
Yes.
Linda?
Yes.
Rex Putnam?
Yes.
Okay.
Carried.
And Linda, if we move, like you saying, if we move too fast, you just say, if you're, as far as keeping up what we're doing, we can do that sometime.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Okay.
I'm just trying to make sure I'm.
All right, proceed.
Okay, second one is competitive bid ordinance. You have an ordinance in your packet. We're not asking you to do anything today. We just want to present it to you. As you guys are aware, we have insurance proceeds on many of our properties, so we're gonna start receiving funds from the insurance company. We can do, and we're not talking about rebuilding, this is just for repairs. For example, the fencing at the public works yard, we need to get that fencing back up. And so what we're looking at, and I'm gonna let Nick jump in just a second and explain it more in detail. We're looking for a process that'll help streamline it. As you know, today our competitive bid ordinance says if it's over $8,000, we have to put it out for bid. It's gonna really slow us down, so we're looking for an alternative to be able to move those projects quickly when we know insurance is gonna be paying for those repairs instead of tax dollars. Nick, if you wanna jump in and.
Sure. What I prepared, and just for discussion purposes, give me any direction you want to do something different. It actually does not limit this to only something that's covered by insurance. At times it might be hard to know if something's really covered by insurance or not. Maybe the insurance is not adequate to do the full repair or something like that. But we can craft it so that it's more focused on insurance. But what it really is doing, as drafted, is it lifts the requirement to do a formal public bidding. That means put it in the newspaper, do everything deliberately slow. It lifts that requirement for 365 days for expenses up to $20,000. Currently that applies at $8,000. For right now, we're not always doing that anyways because we're under emergency conditions. But at some point that will expire and we need to have our own local rules in place ready to work the way that we want them to work. So I can easily make changes so this is more focused on something that's covered by insurance, but that's your preference.
And just to piggyback on what Nick just said, as we all know, cost of construction is up quite a bit. So when you look at the 8,000, it's been the target for many years. We're probably looking at closer to 20 for the same type.
Yeah, that threshold has been in place for a long time, and just for background information, the baseline rules that the state gives us are far higher than that. So we have a more strict rule than what we're required to have.
So the discussion would be just to accept this or approve it for 1 year, and then we bring this back for more discussion, whether you want to keep it at 20 or bring it back to the 8. So this is just for the 1 year, 20,000.
Yeah, I think the main topics to consider, just give staff and I feedback, and we'll give you the corrected ordinance. Do you think 20,000 is a good threshold, and you want it only presented as something that we should have insurance money to pay for, or just more of an in general situation? The purchases in general, they're going to still come back to you. It's just the process to get the offer and the price in place will be quicker and simpler for staff. But you'd still be approving purchases when they're above, I think, 3,000.
Say that again?
I can't hear you.
Actually, it's up above 1,500.
What do you mean they'll come back to us?
The council approves purchase. It's just you won't necessarily get 3 written bids that were in response to a newspaper article. You'll get staff's recommendation to purchase something for a certain amount of dollars, and we'll say yes or no.
And that's before the purchase?
Correct.
So if we felt for some reason it should go out, then we would request that.
Ken, does that sound?
I can't.
Does that sound?
If you're on the phone, can you please mute? I obviously don't know what that means. I'm sorry, I didn't hear Ben.
Well, my question, I guess, if the purchases would come back for our approval before they were made, therefore, if the council thought you were wanting to purchase something for $15,000 and we felt that it should go out to competitive bid, we could request at that time that it go competitive bid.
Right. What we're really talking about is staff's not going to just go make large purchases that you never hear about. You're actually approving the purchase. So that would be, yes, that would be a perfect opportunity for you to say, I know about this kind of situation. That's not a good price. You should bid this.
It's about shortening the competitive bid process. We bring you quotes, you approve the quotes, we don't have to advertise it, wait the 2 weeks, go through the procurement process. It just, helps speed it up, or it's gonna.
But we
really
still
slow.
have the ability to say no, is what I'm
Absolutely.
saying.
And this would be just earmarked for things that Michael has destroyed and we have to fix and rebuild. I mean, it wouldn't be for something within this building where, just because somebody says, I think we need this.
No, it's
This
for
is just
repairs
for
due to the
repairs of
hurricane,
what
and it's
Michael-
not for buildings, but
It's
those
just
will
for
all go
what
through a
Michael
competitive
did to us.
process. Yes,
Okay, I'll make that change.
the carpet, the, the
Yes,
fencing,
just come down,
those type of things.
come this way, second door on the right, Dora.
And you also, you wanna limit this to only something that we feel we have insurance coverage for?
Well, if it's gotta come before us, I mean, and if it didn't come before us, yes, but since it still has to come before us before, it's approved, I think if we're notified at that point in time that it's not an insurance item, then that gives us the ability to reconsider. But I think we need to know when it comes before us if this is for an insurance covered item.
And the only other things I did add to this, everything we talked about was, that's a temporary rule, just to help right now while things are hectic. I did also add some, I would really consider them corrections to our long-term permanent policy, just to add exceptions for emergency conditions, which we've kind of assumed is built into this process anyway, so it just doesn't really say it. And then, for piggybacking on other public contracts, which we also do sometimes.
It says it's waiving formal competitive purchasing requirements for 365 days.
Up to 20,000.
Okay, I don't like $20,000. We've had 8,000 for a few years. But for me personally, I don't see anything to be gained by jumping it to 20,000. And if I don't know, for some reason, again, I'm maybe the only one confused, but if we need to replace a fence that's out here around the maintenance yard, and it's $18,000, we don't get I mean, if we have one bidder, they can do that. Is that right? I mean, staff can do that.
What we're doing.
Or no bid,
fence is
done
a-
that, no
The fence
bid.
is a good example. We put out, made, I don't know how many phone calls to get quotes on the fence. We only had one company call us back in weeks. And if we put it out, we stop, we put it out for competitive bid. Again, how many are gonna respond? Now you've lengthened the time. So we were just trying to streamline it when the insurance is paying for
I
it.
don't have a problem streamlining it and it's insurance covered, but I don't think it should be, I think the council should approve the spending of that money. And that's not what this says,
I
unless
think
I'm,
it does over $1,500.
It's over, yeah, we still have our normal rule in place, it's over $1,500 purchases come to you. It's really all the steps that would have occurred before it came to you for consideration. That's what we're streamlining. You still approve the purchase. It's just rather than seeing a package where multiple companies put in written bids in response to a newspaper ad, you might just see staff telling you, we called around, we got 2 prices, we'd like you to approve a particular purchase.
so it's over $1,500.
That's our current rule, that's not changing.
Okay, so the $8,000 is for the competitive bid number. That's the threshold for the competitive bid, where you get 3 bids, you look at them, you present them, and everybody says like A, B, or C. We're changing that if you have 1, 2, or none, you'll present it for approval.
Yes.
And the step we're really eliminating is putting something out in the newspaper. I mean, I think staff's gonna still price shop. They're not gonna just try to go with the first option. It's just, the newspaper process adds time and effort.
And then we have the ability to stop that. I mean, if we don't wanna do it, we just say,
This is not a good purchase.
It's the process that we're changing, not the approval of the money.
Correct.
As usual, I think that could be written differently. But that's okay. But I'm just trying, I'm sorry, I'm trying to make sure I understand what we're doing.
It's got to build chargeable hours.
Okay, so that's coming up, I guess you're putting that on the agenda
If you guys are comfortable with that for next week?
for next week. Well, I mean, we'll have time to, we got a whole week to let you know.
Right.
But did you,
20,000.
yeah, that's
As
okay,
long as it comes in front of
as
us.
long as it's, if it's just the procedure by which it gets to us, yes, yes.
I did get a note that the mayor, that for security reasons, the governor's office has asked us to clear the room when they arrive. So we
I'm
will have
sorry.
to clear the room when the governor arrives.
Oh.
For security reasons, we have to clear the room, so just,
All right, well, I talked to them about that out there, but they're new too, so we'll handle it, whatever we gotta do. Okay. Did everyone hear that? Just so you don't think that I told you something different, okay? All right, which I did. All right, where are we? Number three, okay,
Can
I'm
we
sorry.
go through the miscellaneous items, because the comp plan may take longer and we'll
Yeah.
have to be interrupted in the
There you
middle
go,
of it.
let's do,
so-
all right, skip down to miscellaneous.
Just wanna give everybody an update on the flood map, issue. I know there's all kinds of things on social media. If it doesn't come from the city, don't believe it. We have the best available maps from FEMA. We received those, after Christmas. And we have the inundation, the surge map, as well as the high water marks. Dean and I have been working on those, looking at, and of course, we're gonna be working with the NFIP, partners with FEMA to look at that. So we're working on those maps currently. We will have a decision by the time the moratorium ends, but we don't have a decision yet. It's a little more complicated. We thought when we received those maps, they would have all of that information already as part of the maps, and it is not. So we're having to map all that in, but it,
Map,
Flood
help
map.
us there, map what,
the flood maps.
what map, what in?
That will determine, base flood elevation and how high you have to go.
Well, are the zones on? X, AE?
Oh, yeah, the zones are on there, but we have lots of questions about it. So we're working on those. It's a process, because remember, they don't just give you your maps, the maps are as of 2017. Their best available data is of 2017, they're not even calling them preliminary maps. So we have to do the work to look at, the area, look at the storm surge, look at the high water marks, and make some decisions.
No,
And
you're
that's
talking
what
about
we're
this
doing.
Michael,
We're
the
talking about.
effects of Michael.
Yes, and Michael's just one storm, so one storm is not gonna change it that much, but we still have to look at the surge and look at the high water marks and make some decisions. So we're working on that now.
When would we have kind of a first blush
Come
look
in,
that we could
to the
start
left, and then the first door on the
looking
right.
at and thinking,
Couple of weeks, maybe. The government shutdown has also not helped us, so getting the right people that we need. A lot of the websites, the data we use there, you go to the website, they're shut down due to a lapse in appropriation, so the timing couldn't be worse. But I would say a week to 2
Well,
weeks.
how can we see what you have?
How
How
can-
do we get what you say you're
They-
working on?
They haven't been published yet. I do have that map I can share with the council. They have not been published. The last thing we wanna do is, and I know Mayor, you and I talked about this, is release information to the public that's preliminary, and then people go off and make decisions with. So we're trying to avoid that. So if folks will just be patient with us, we'll have those answers, in a couple of weeks. Remember, the original date was the moratorium date, and we're still working towards that date. We're still gonna meet that date,
it's February 8th.
February 8th.
Mr. Captain,
Yeah,
just a quick question, could you ask?
Yeah.
Does that mean that, is the city making their own adjustments to the flood map? Is that what I'm hearing, or are we going by FEMA's
I don't know,
recommendation?
I don't know, I haven't seen them, and I'm a little bit, to be honest with you, I don't fully understand the adjustments that we're looking at.
We don't change the map, but we do what's called freeboarding. We'll raise, if you guys remember, Bay County, I think they freeboarded 2 feet. Gulf County's freeboarded 2 feet. And they just did it across the board. We decided we wanted to be more scientific with it and not,
Stop it, I'm sorry.
Okay, well, that'd be, I understand, I don't know how to use it. All right.
leave it in the car.
After Michael, I fell and broke my phone I could use, and I got one I can't use.
So anyways, we don't change the maps, but we make decisions locally, just like Gulf County did, just like Bay County did. But if you remember, both, Bay and Gulf County, they already had their maps. We were audited in 2017, we didn't have those updated maps yet. And we still don't, we're using best available data.
Do you run a risk, like they freeboarded 2 feet, what if they're off?
That's the problem, and that's what we're trying to avoid. You make a quick decision, and then, if
Do
it
you
ends
still
up being
adjust
wrong,
in X zones?
we may have to. Mhm.
Well, how do we as a council be more involved in that process?
Well, you're gonna have to approve it at the end of the day.
Yeah, but will we know what adjustments were made?
Absolutely. Mhm.
We need a special meeting.
Uh,
Yeah, this,
I
it's
guess
not,
Well, isn't
I wanna be involved, I'm just as a count, I wanna know what we're doing with the adjustments.
Mhm.
That's all I'm saying. Whatever they are.
right, you
don't-
absolutely will. We'll bring you all the data and tell you how we figured
But
it,
when
what we
will,
did.
well, will we get it before February 8th?
Absolutely. We're thinking 2 weeks.
Okay,
That'll put
all right,
us
I was
the
just
third
thinking,
week
if
in
you said, when you said we're
No,
shooting for
to the
that February
public.
8th,
To the public. February 8th is our
I
deadline.
just, I want the council to have, or I want those that have, I want to be able to see what adjustments we're making.
You will.
And it's Dewberry that's working on this.
Dewberry's helping us. Mhm.
Okay.
Right.
You'll
We also
eventually-
are working with our FEMA partners who are helping us as well.
You'll eventually get FEMA's map, and for us to stay in the good graces of the National Flood Insurance Program, that's the minimum we need to adopt. Now, Tanya's talking about maybe there are some things that would be better for the city to go a little further on, then that's just something we'll have to
Well,
consider.
elevation's a big deal.
And that's up to
It's a big
Dewberry's.
deal when it comes to if it's an X zone, X is a non-flood zone. I'm just confused over what we're gonna adjust if they already assigned it as an X zone.
X is a 500-year flood zone. So, and we do have areas that are not in a flood zone at all, but X is a 500-year flood. Michael was a 500-year storm.
Okay, just for the record, the freeboarding thing is one of those things that can change a lot about Mexico Beach. So I'm just concerned about whatever adjustments and what data we're getting and who we're asking, and if we don't, sometimes you ask too much and you get more information than you need. So I'm just so it's documented and we have a chance to look at it, I wanna be, as a council, we need to be involved in that.
Then again, we might not change anything after you've looked at it and your educated guess. You know, I mean, there's nothing set in stone one way or the other.
Right, and here, our goal is to, A, make sure that we're more resilient for the next storm, and B, keep your flood insurance premiums down, that's our goal. And as Nick said, the flood elevations that FEMA presents, they're minimum standards, and they could be lower than minimum standards, because how FEMA approaches the map is they round either up or down. So you could be, if it ends up the flood elevation is 12.4, then they're gonna round down to 12, so you've automatically lost.
Almost a half foot.
You could lose up
But
to half
remember
of
now,
that, so.
pre-Michael, we've never had an issue in X zones or massaging or manipulating the data. We had one storm, and everything I've read says that you don't make major adjustments over a one-time event.
You don't, but Mayor, I would say this, We do have flooding today outside of Swan in some of those X zones. We do.
Part of that is
Not
also
from mine.
due to our
Not
storm
from
drainage.
Not from a hurricane.
No, but we do have flooding, so.
Do we have any idea when they may start issuing permits to rebuild?
February 8th.
February 8th?
February 8th.
Okay.
That's been the date from the beginning.
We're gonna be
Okay,
ready.
well,
I didn't know if this changed it.
So we'll, I don't know if we'll have enough information by next Tuesday, but we'll try. We'll try to have enough information by next Tuesday.
maybe we can start the process. Maybe we don't have to have everything, but I mean, at least see, I'd like to see what it is that what are we using for data? At least discuss that and have something so I understand what we're doing. I'm a little bit in the dark in understanding, when you say we're making adjustments, I'm not sure what it is what information are we gathering from who? Who are we gathering more data from than what FEMA gave us for the flood map?
Well, as I explained to you the other day, we're getting the inundation maps and the high water marks. So we have a lot of data that we're using to plug in, and we will bring you what we have next Tuesday. How about that?
You mentioned that the maps that you were provided, they're not even considered preliminary yet.
Right.
So are you
Okay.
thinking that prior to our moratorium expiring, that we would have a map appropriate for adoption, or is that gonna have to likely come later?
That would come later because the way FEMA does that, they will have to hold, that's why Bay County isn't adopted yet. They're gonna have public meetings, they're gonna have education outreach meetings, and then the city, the council will have to formally adopt those maps. And I'm not sure that will happen by February 8th. It's usually a longer process, but what we have the option to do, as other counties have done, or cities, is to base our ordinance on the best available maps, which is what Tane is talking about. So it's not the official draft FEMA map yet, but it's the best available data, and we would base our floodplain ordinance on that.
Because we have to be very careful. I can tell you the FEMA maps are not gonna be adopted and approved, and that's not gonna happen before February 8th,
No.
because they're still best available. But if we're not careful and we don't do this right, then people are gonna rebuild, and then when the final maps come out, that could be a problem. So we're trying to be diligent and do the right thing and look at all the data and make sure that, we're making good decisions. But we'll bring you what we have
And that's
next Tuesday.
that's what I wanna do too.
So the only other comment would be, let's say we're gonna take the freeboarding approach and consider increasing one of the existing heights or some of them. We would typically do that, we'd need to do that by ordinance. And in order to have a first reading and a notice second reading before February 8th,
Mhm.
we're very tight on
We are
that.
getting very tight, you know that, we understand.
Can you tell me how different zoning in FEMA might affect commercial buildings versus residential? Because it seems to me most everything is directed towards residences and people rebuilding their houses, and not much talk about businesses.
There's no difference in the flood map between residential.
Well, I'm
and
not
commercial.
just have a map, but I mean, maybe just like elevations and things like that. Will businesses be held to the same elevation standards, the freeboarding or all that, as a house would, a residential?
Which again, Mike, is the struggle, that's where we're trying to,
And can I just comment one thing on the Gulf County? They did raise theirs to the 2 foot, but that is temporary. That is not their,
Right,
Where
if
they're
somebody
starting,
wants
that's
to
just
build
the-
right now, that's what they have to do.
that's why they did it, to protect people a little bit. I just don't want us to get too crazy. Say, we gotta go 6 feet.
yeah.
Just know that's temporary.
Can I ask you a question on that? I moved here just recently from Oldmore, Florida, and I know FEMA changed flood coding, and it had a big effect on insurance. The FEMA, if they tell you 10 feet, just as an example, you guys are gonna decide whether it's gonna be 12 feet or 14 feet. But 10 feet would be what you would have to adopt, correct, for elevation to change? Because I know there's no grandfathering on insurance, and that was a big issue where I came from. I mean, when I left there, I had a house that wasn't in a flood zone. FEMA changed their maps, I was in a flood zone. Now I had to get flood insurance, and it was going up 10% a year until it reached where it should be. And I asked FEMA, okay, where am I supposed to be? And they said eventually you'd be up around $8 grand. For a house I paid $100-something thousand for. I mean, that was insane. That's one reason why we sold and left, well, I could. I finally had to drop my flood insurance, but luckily my house was paid for, so I could go with another company. But the insurance is gonna have a major deal. So, I mean, if I had a choice to build a house, I would definitely make it higher, because 10 years from now, they could change the flood zones again. If you're not grandfathered, now you're in a new flood zone, and believe me, that insurance will do you in. It is crazy what they're charging.
Okay. Any other questions? We're gonna try to get some information, so we ask to discuss at the table. All right, keep going. Or where, are we still under miscellaneous?
We're under miscellaneous.
Okay.
You should have a couple of things. The first is the Atkins addendum. When we signed the contract with Atkins, we had, during the emergency period, we had a not to exceed of $500,000. And so if you guys remember, we jumped on the substantial damage estimate process quickly. I will tell you that some of the areas haven't even started that, but we jumped on it. We had the opportunity to do it quickly so people could start making decisions. So what we thought that the SDE process would be billed in with the permanent contract, but some of those costs came in during the emergency period. So this is an addendum just to raise the not to exceed to $560 to cover the SDE work that we did during the, I'm sorry, $575 is what's in here, Nick. I know the invoice is $560, but not to exceed $575 just for that emergency period, and that is strictly for the work they did for substantial damage.
Have we looked at those invoices, or have we qualified that indeed they did?
Mm-hmm.
So your recommendation is
To approve the
to
addendum.
approve the, addendum that exceeds the 500,000.
And this was just for that emergency period.
Okay? Any questions concerning the addendum? And that emergency period covers what? Time, is there a time frame, or is there
Yeah,
just
it was
a number of hours?
It was effective October 22nd. Do you remember the dates on it? It was just that first 30-day procurement period on that emergency contract. I don't have the dates.
All right, but
before me.
we're out of that now.
Yeah, oh yeah, we're out of it.
I think
This
it
is,
went
but we're
longer
just
than
getting
30,
the,
but yeah, we're out of it.
we're just getting the invoice, so.
Okay?
We don't expect any other additional within that period of time?
For the emergency,
Yes.
not that I'm aware of. I mean, it can't exceed this, once you sign that.
Well, they can bill us more than that, we'd have to be here again. though. I'm just
Adrian.
curious.
It's out there. Come on in.
5-minute warning, Mayor.
Okay. All right. We'll take, while we're here, questions? Chair will entertain a motion.
So moved to increase it to $575.
Or just approve the addendum.
Approve the addendum.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the addendum, so I have a motion and a second. Is there any opposition? All right, let the record reflect 4-0. All right, we're on, we're going to ask to clear the room and give us an opportunity to, that was a requirement from the governor's staff, so if we could do that. And is it literally clear the room or clear the building?
Well, if the meeting's over, then I guess we can just adjourn the meeting.
No, the meeting's not over.
We need to
Okay.
keep the meeting adjourned if we're all gonna participate.
Right, I
I
know.
think we definitely need to clear the room though.
Okay. All right, so if y'all would please give us or help us by doing that, we would appreciate it. And
I don't even mind that the meeting is being recorded, so, I mean,